If you enjoy me ranting for a little bit, you are lucky. Because we promised you a review for Section 31 last week, but that was before we found out that in my country the movie doesn't come out for another week, so next week. How very 1995. Paramount just doesn't seem to get that we now have the internet in this world, and fans who will have to wait more than 2 weeks outside of the US will get spoiled on social media. It just doesn't work that way anymore. Warner gets that, Disney gets that, but Paramount does not. They probably just found out that VHS has been replaced by DVDs. And it's not the first time either. They waited for their own streaming platform to be released in Europe before giving us Discovery Season 4 and 5 months after its release. And now, when they have their own platform, they still will not release worldwide at the same time. Don't worry, the review is coming. At a time, no one will care anymore, no doubt. This is a review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. Angry this time. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest Champions a car has to offer, and let's hope they are more friendly. Let me introduce them to you. First up, voice only, we have Mr. Lord Death Man. How are you?
Ready for duty.
Great. The original is here. Mr. Taylor first, how are you?
I am excellent.
And last but certainly not least, showing his beautiful face on camera, it's Merv. How are you, man?
I'm fantastic.
I'm glad I didn't break your spirits yet. This is episode 14 of our Star Trek project, where we will be reviewing Star Trek, all of it, in order of release, kinda. So today we're going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 4, except for the last episode. We will throw Redemption Part 1 in with our Season 5 review, where we can review Part 1 and Part 2 at the same time. Before we dive into our discussion today, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. Click on the link in the description. That will get you to the setup an account page, and, well, do your thing, and you can talk to us on the board. We would love it if you do that. As mentioned before, we will be discussing 25 episodes of Season 4, one of Season 3, and one of Season 4 we'll leave for next month. It's getting very complicated. It's Star Trek The Next Generation Season 4, people. But yeah, before we do that, like I said, we have some unfinished business from Season 3. We need to talk about the best of both worlds, Part 1 and 2. And I want to give the floor to Mr. Taylor first. Is this the best or one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever made?
It's one of the best, absolutely.
Okay.
And this two-part episode with the Borg invasion, the assimilation of Jean-Luc Picard, the Battle of Wolf 359, it's one of the most important and most pivotal events in the entire history of the franchise that will have repercussions for decades to come. And it's just a huge moment for the whole show, or for the whole franchise.
You can actually add the next episode in, which is like an epilogue on the best of both worlds, where he visits his family in La Barre, France.
Yeah, I mean, they actually get to take a vacation for a change and go back to Earth. And Jean-Luc, of course, has a lot of baggage to deal with, a lot of trauma to deal with, both what he's gone through in space and back home with the family. So I thought that was good that they actually followed up that way.
Yeah.
As far as the main two episodes, I mean, there's really nothing to complain about. There was the way the first half ended, right where Riker is about to fire and possibly kill Jean-Luc, and then it picks up on the second episode and he fires and nothing happens. To me, that was a little anticlimactic there. I realized they had to have a whole nother episode to do, but it always just felt a little bit let down with that particular moment. But they made up for it with the rest of the episode.
Mhm.
The thing that I get is always when they're going into battle with the Borg, they know the Borg is overwhelmingly powerful. They know they have no mercy. They assimilate everything that they come in contact with. I always have it in the back of my mind. Do we still have all those kids on the ship? Or did we try at least to send them someplace safe before we did this? They always seem to forget about the kids when they're doing this incredibly dangerous stuff. They just want the audience to forget that we have children on board and we're taking them into the most dangerous circumstances possible. They didn't even
Yeah.
separate the saucer section. I guess that wasn't in the budget. I don't know, but that's just nitpicky. Great episode.
Mhm. Merv, you are lucky you saw this for the first time. So we were hyping everything up. The Borg, Star Trek is great, and then you get to these episodes. So you must say, "Oh, those guys were right. It is great."
I mean, it really is. Yeah, it definitely, like Taylor mentioned, how this is a pivotal moment for like the entire history for decades to come. I haven't seen that yet, but like you feel the weight of it, even only being this far, on a first time watch. Like this feels like a big deal, and especially like the moment when you see what has become of Picard. I forget what his Borg name was at that point, but um, like there's a little bit of the rug pulled out because I know he's not like gonna go full board for the rest because I know there's multiple seasons left and movies and all that stuff. So I don't get that lost in it, but like the ramifications of this are definitely felt throughout this season and then presumably throughout, the rest of Picard's life, probably, the just what he goes through in these two episodes. And there's a lot to love about these two episodes, I think, even outside of that. Obviously, there's great action, and in like you're wondering how they're going to get one over on the Borg, which up to this point have seemed like insurmountable. The only way they escaped last time we saw them, I believe, was because of Q, who is basically a god. So it was really cool to see everyone, especially in Picard's absence. I always like whenever Picard is removed from the situation to see how everyone else steps up in his crew, number one and Data and Worf and everyone else. So all those aspects were really cool. But really the crux of it is like what happens, what Picard goes through here is intense. And then, the rest of the season, especially, I think you feel the weight of that more than anything else.
Yeah, Locutus, as Taylor mentioned, is his Borg name. And trust me, once we get to first contact, you will never, ever, ever forget. Lord Deathman, I actually like the thought of Riker being removed. I'm not a real Will Riker fan. I will admit that right away. So the moment I saw that nice blonde commander show up, I was like, yes, that's a good idea. But they didn't follow up on that. I'm still disappointed. Lord Deathman, do you like these two episodes as much as the rest of us do?
Of course, they're two of the most thrilling episodes of Star Trek ever conceived. And I would go as far as to say that this is probably one of the greatest cliffhangers in television history. And I know that my history with television may not go back as far with some, but this was real edge of your seat, nail biter territory when I was very young and watched this. It wasn't like you were going to be able to just click next and then see that next episode, right?
You had
we
to wait
hung
for a
out
few months.
Yeah, and it was a nail biter. Right? We were like, oh, did you see what happened, right? And a part of you always knows that things are going to get resolved and then there's going to be a reset back to the status quo. But the thinking during that interval was like, oh, can they do it in one episode? Is it going to take like two episodes? Is someone going to disappear from the show for a little while? Because Patrick Stewart was, he was picking up a lot of momentum as an actor and starting to seek out other projects outside of Star Trek and theater. So, anything could have happened in a certain way. And I always remember this cliffhanger as being, in my top 5 of like television cliffhangers in terms of watching the assimilated Jean-Luc Picard turn towards camera with that dramatic laser kind of hitting you full screen in the face, and then him proclaiming himself to be Locutus of Borg. This is a great two-parter for me for a couple of reasons, and I'll try to keep this brief. But one, I like this one because this emphasizes the fact that the Starfleet is not only an engine of exploration and peacekeeping, but it's also a paramilitary organization. So we get to see them operate as soldiers in this particular context, although whether their type of soldiering would hold up in real world scrutiny is another question altogether. But still, we get to see a different side of Starfleet and how it mobilizes to deal with a threat like the Borg. I always wondered if Picard is not in charge, does this work anymore? You know, like could Riker really step up, be as charismatic, really hold up? I see we have Grandmaster's pronouncement on that, but I think Will does an admirable job when Picard is taken out of the picture, and he does it in his own command style. He is not Picard. He does have that more, I want to say, easygoing sort of command style. Still firm, still imperative, but not as quite as polished or as formal, I think, as Picard could be in some situations. I totally loved having Elizabeth Dennehy come on the show as Lieutenant Commander Shelby. I believe that was her rank. And yeah, you know what? I was just about to spoil something, but I know we've got Merv on the show today, so I'm not going to say anything else about the fate of Shelby. But that being said, that created such tension, such drama, just bringing in a very ambitious lieutenant who's looking to climb the ranks, looking to get that first officer spot. And she is jockeying. You don't really see a lot of careerist Starfleet officers. And it was like there must be some out there, guys who are not just living fat off the hog on the flagship, right? They want to get status, they want to get promoted, they want to move up. So great character. Guinan is also great. Whoopi Goldberg, of course, steals almost every scene that she's in because she just brings so much gravitas to the role. And even though you only see her briefly, she makes such a huge impact, I think, in this storyline for me personally. But for me, this really is a Riker story. I know that's going to be a little difficult for some fans to kind of process, but this is all about his kind of hesitation to kind of accept his own command, how he responds to the situation under pressure. Can he make those tough decisions in terms of firing on the ship with Picard on it? The only ding I would give it is the same one that Taylor did, which is the nothing burger that we waited for 3 or 4 months in terms of he fires and nothing goes on. But it's forgivable, especially the way the rest of the episode kind of turns out, where we recover Picard. Everyone knows the story here, but I think the solution was fairly novel, and I think everybody got pushed out of their comfort zone and changed the status quo of the ship to make things to change the dynamic in such a way that the show just kind of ups itself to another level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with all of you, and let's just say, well, it does get better than this, but not many times. You know what? It's just time to move on to our section, Grandmaster's Picks. Yeah, that we talked about the best of both worlds. Will not say that I don't get my picks first. And I picked this month. I picked Reunion, I picked The Wounded, and I picked The Drumhead. And Merv, what were your thoughts on these 3 episodes?
Well, The Drumhead stands out as one of my favorite episodes, probably ever. I do think it was a little bit built up because I had seen some of the comments about it on the board beforehand, but I do think it lives up to its build up in my head, just with how it plays out regarding like the witch hunt aspect of it, and it just how stupid and what's the word, like bureaucratic some of the aspects of it are. It's just like it's frustrating on a different level than a lot of Star Trek episodes, but it's really good on other levels too. I love that episode. Reunion, that was the one with Tasha's sister, correct?
No.
No?
That
Which one
was
was
the
Green?
one with where the
Worf's son.
where with Worf's son and where
Oh,
where there's a fight between the Duras and Gowron for the
yes.
chancellorship in the Klingon Empire.
Yes. My apologies. I had it the wrong title in my head. Love that episode. Again,
I
pretty
picked this
much anything to
especially
do with
for you because you love the Klingon stuff so
yeah.
much.
Yeah, the really this season, I mean, I want to say just flat out, Worf became my favorite character this season because so many storylines were heavily involved with him and the Klingons and the Civil War and all that stuff. But that episode especially was fantastic. There's like this running thread throughout a lot of these episodes of family, and whenever you see like his son, and then his love interest comes back, love Worf, love his son, love that he couldn't what's the word, he couldn't really, he Worf seemed scared of a lot of things, especially in regards to his family, and he couldn't quite step into it. um the House of Duras is a menace. Just all around.
Oh,
um
wait until you meet his sisters.
oh yeah, that's next season. And then what was the other one, the other episode? I
The
apologize.
Wounded. That's where the Enterprise has to determine, has to work with the Cardassians, because they claim a Federation ship has been attacking Cardassian, and they do that because they claim that Cardassian is building up their military, which they may or may not do. I especially picked it because it has Mark Alimo in it, which will become a major figure in Deep Space Nine, of course. And he plays another Cardassian in this episode. Then he ends up playing for 7 seasons in Deep Space Nine. But still, I just wanted to acknowledge that he was there.
Really like the Cardassian introduction. I really like anytime they introduce a new race, especially if they are we'll just say on par with the Federation or any kind of a threat whatsoever. It's really interesting to see that play out. Bob Gunton shows up in that episode as the Captain Maxwell. I know him from all kinds of stuff. He's really great, and I really like that episode. Really propped up O'Brien as a steady character. He's been a lot of background characters, and I recognize the actor from a million things, back in the 80s and 90s as well. But this one I think really like gives him a story, and then obviously they follow up on that later on with like his wife and stuff like that. But yeah, I really like a lot of aspects there that I didn't know. I don't know. I'm curious to see where the Kardashians go as Kardashians go as far as the future of the franchise at this point.
Yeah. As Trekkies, whenever someone mentions the Kardashians, we don't think about those dolled up plastic
Which I'm
women.
just curious, which are worse, the Cardassians or the Kardashians?
Well, that's a nice debate, but we keep that for our season 7 of Deep Space Nine discussion.
Kim is the queen of Kardashian Empire. That's a reveal later in Deep Space Nine. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. The Kardashian Union at the end. Then no, never mind. Never. No, I don't want to make those jokes. Taylor, what are your thoughts on those 3 episodes?
3 episodes. Drumhead. Greatest thing about Drumhead is they got Gene Simmons to appear. Twice nominated for Oscars, from Spartacus, Hamlet, Guys and Dolls, many other roles. She's just a phenomenal actress, and she did a great job playing the Admiral in this episode. She's a great actress. She played the role extremely well. You understood her, where she was coming from, her psyche, as it revealed itself. So yeah, all around just fantastic that they were able to get her for the episode. The Wounded is actually one of my favorite episodes of the whole series for many reasons. One, it does start bringing us up to speed on the introduction of the Cardassians, and we learn a little bit more about them and where they're coming from. More about Miles O'Brien. We see some of his home life with Keiko after they were married in the previous episode. We find out a little bit about his background. He had served in combat in the previous Cardassian war. He had served under this captain who has now kind of went off the rails and is attacking Cardassians because he believes they are up to something, which it turns out they probably are. At least Jean-Luc ends up agreeing that they probably are. Tells the Cardassians, "We will be watching you." But and I also love how, the wounds. I mean, the title is The Wounded, but the wounds of war go very deep in O'Brien, in the captain, even in the Cardassians. You can feel it to some degree. There's that speech in the turbo lift where O'Brien talks to the Cardassians, tells them about the stuff that happened to him during the war, and he says, "I don't hate you. I hate what I became because of you," or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he has to go in to the captain who's lost it now and talk him down, based on their mutual understanding of what they've both been through together, how they had served in combat together. They sang one of my favorite songs of all time, Minstrel Boy, so that's an added bonus. Just an all-around great episode and great acting for all of them. As far as reunion goes, I'll say it now, Alexander, not one of my favorite characters going forward, but he gets introduced here. He gets brought on board. We'll see a lot more of him later on. Not too much, though. They don't overdo it with him. But we see more of him later on. Gowron becomes leader of the Klingon Empire. That will continue for a very long time, and the actor is great, and he does a great job playing Gowron. So,
Robert O'Reilly, people.
Yeah, he's amazing.
The eyes.
That's it. Yeah, he's going to do some incredible stuff as we go forward. So I thought that's for me, that's the key takeaway from that episode is now Gowron is now in charge, and the Klingon Empire is never going to be the same.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Lord Deathman, can I have your thoughts on those 3 episodes? Reunion, The Wounded, and The Drumhead.
Yeah, you picked 3 of just the strongest episodes there are of Star Trek.
Why do you think I do this section so I get to choose the best ones and then I let you scramble for the scraps?
Indeed.
But
yes.
If these are the scraps, then still it's tasty.
Yeah, and there are hardly any scraps in season 4, 1 or 2. But that being said, starting with Reunion, the biggest highlight of that episode really comes with Susie Plaxton as K'Ehleyr. She has played everything from a Romulan, a Vulcan. You will find Susie doing great work across the entire Star Trek franchise. I won't get into too many specifics about some of the other characters she plays, but wonderful actress. And this is probably her best work in the series, in my opinion. Of course, you get the great Robert O'Reilly, Mr. Eyes, as Gowron. And he's just endlessly fun in the role because he knows how to chew the scenery. But I think, why this has such high fan regard is really because it brings us even deeper into Klingon politics. It introduces Picard into this role as a mediator between rival Klingon factions in a way that seemed very substantive. It just seemed like no one else in the world but Picard could have stepped into the breach to help these folks get the job done because of his reputation for being so diplomatic. That being said, though, getting into Worf's personal life, and I'm also on Taylor's side as far as Alexander. I never thought that the child actor whose name escapes me, who played Alexander, was the strongest actor on the show. I do see what the writers were trying to do in terms of giving Worf a sort of, like more to do in terms of his backstory on the show by giving him this wrinkle, this complication of having a child moving forward. I see what they were trying to do, but Alexander sort of ends up in kind of Wesley Crusher territory for me, more so than I see the thumbs up from Merv, more than being an asset. So, but that being said, though, this is a very dramatic story. It's a very emotional story, and I think that they pulled off all of that very well. And again, this one really gets high marks for further developing the Klingons and the introduction. Well, not the introduction, really the departure. Spoilers if you haven't seen this, of Susie Plaxton as Kalar. With the Wounded, also a great episode. There's no doubting this. I think Cole Meany gets to step up in a meaningful way that you probably haven't seen him sort of take center stage in the series before. We get a little bit of his backstory. We understand his role as an enlisted man. You don't really get a lot. It always focuses on officers in Starfleet, but the chief, being enlisted, has a slightly different perspective, and actually, was in a ground conflict with a rival faction of the Federation. Later on, they'll even go deeper into that. But again, I'm trying not to give too much away for folks who haven't on this call who haven't seen too much of what's to come. But that being said, this is a very important episode because not only does it establish the Cardassians kind of as a major race in the Star Trek universe, but it really goes into like what it's like for Starfleet officers dealing with the aftermath of having been a part of a war. They do go a little bit into kind of the post-traumatic stress that I think that Captain Maxwell is experiencing there, played by the great Bob Gunton. And I do see this as a kind of a landmark episode for showing you a less perfect Starfleet officer who is actually a little mentally distressed and affected. It doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong about the situation, but the way he's handling things throughout it just gets to show you that not every Starfleet officer is well composed and perfectly timed in all of their actions in diplomacy. Maxwell has a grudge, and it's plain to see in those episodes, or in that episode. Now, the drumhead, which I saved for last, it's a classic. I feel hard pressed to say anything that hasn't been said about this episode because it is just so fantastic. Except for, why is Admiral Satie sort of dressed like she's about to head out to a disco in the 70s, right? Like, why isn't she like in Admiral uniform? She's totally like dressed. I'm going to dress however the way I want to. It's a bit of a heavy-handed parallel in terms of McCarthyism, and the dangers of unchecked authority, but the performances are so beautiful. They're so heartfelt. I think Patrick Stewart probably does. This is in the top 5 of episodes of his acting. The way he summons just this kind of fatigue, the sort of acquiescing to this at first, and then finally summoning the strength and the will to kind of stand up to Admiral Satie, using her father kind of against her in these discussions, quoting him, and the great, of course, Gene Simmons. There we go. That's always a plus there. And I forget the name of the actor who played the person of Romulan lineage, but I think he does a good job of trying to play someone who's under this unwanted tension and spotlight as his background gets probed and this sort of witch hunt goes underway. But it is an eminently quotable episode. It's an episode with what I think is a great kind of moral lesson about unchecked authority, and I think you get some of the best performances on record from the franchise in that episode. So yeah, it's a killer episode all around.
Yeah, I agree. Doing the administration here, the actor that played Alexander Rozhenko is called Brian Bonsall, and Simon Tarsus is played by Spencer Garrett, just so we are aligned. Well, Taylor, That was my section. Let's move on to your pick for season 4 of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I just want to mention one real quick and a couple of aspects about it. The episode is called First Contact, which is such a great title that they recycled it for a movie later on. But I like it because something happens that I always thought about watching other previous episodes from the original series and from Next Generation is they go on these away missions where they disguise themselves as the more primitive people. I always wondered, like, what if something goes wrong? What happens if they get found out? And that's exactly what happens. The Riker is down there disguised as one of these aliens, and he has some sort of accident where he's injured and unconscious, and he ends up in a hospital. And the doctors are examining him, and they're like, "This, what the hell is? This is not our species. Where did this guy come from?" And these are people, of course, who don't know about aliens, who had never had any contact with anyone outside of their own planet. And then he tries to talk his way out of it, and it's not even close to working. You're like, "Oh yeah, no, I have a genetic disorder that caused my forehead to not look like your forehead, so I wear a fake one just to blend it." Yeah, they're not buying it, pal. It's not working. Like, you reminded me of Spock, Kirk and Spock when they went back in time, and he's like, Spock got his head caught in a rice picker
rice
or
picker.
something that pulled his ears. Classic. So anyway, it actually worked that time. It didn't work this time. But then, Picard makes the decision that it's time for this planet to actually make contact, the Federation to make contact with them, which they do. And then it comes to a second interesting thing that I had thought about previously is like, what if they're not ready? What if they don't want to make contact? What if they're not thrilled about the idea of a vastly superior alien empire that calls itself the Federation coming here and saying, "We're here to help you"? Okay. Might be a little trepidatious about
We come in
that.
peace, we shoot to kill.
Exactly. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. The scariest words in the language. And it turns out that this planet authorities and they're all very thoughtful about it. They actually look at all the different sides. There's people on both sides of the issue, and they come to a decision that we're not ready, and Picard has to accept it and move on.
Well, that one doctor was ready.
Yeah, she was real ready. But again, there were people on both sides, and a decision had to be made one way or the other. And they just decided that this particular planet, maybe later. And that always brings me to something else that I always thought about. What if it wasn't the Federation that made first contact with them? What if it's the Cardassians or the Klingon Empire who makes first contact with these primitive people? What happens if they just come in and just get conquered? I would like to see an episode that explored that one day. Like the Federation is like, no, please don't conquer those people. They're not Federation. We can conquer them if we want. I wonder what would happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just an episode that I think is unique in some ways. There's many great episodes this season, but just want to talk about that one.
Yeah. Lord Death Man, what's your pick for this season 4?
I picked the barn burner, which is called The Mind's Eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked that one because it's obviously inspired by one of my favorite movies of the 60s with Frank Sinatra called The Manchurian Candidate. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. But this episode takes a lot of inspiration from it in terms of the setup. Essentially, Lieutenant Commander LaForge, I believe he is en route to Risa. And forgive me, I haven't rewatched the episode very recently, but it is memorable. And I think his shuttle gets intercepted by a Romulan warbird.
Yeah.
And from there, he's kidnapped, right? And
Yeah.
put through a very intense kind of brainwashing procedure, which involves the novel use of his visor, which kind of is fed false visual information like directly to his brain. So he was like the best candidate to choose for this kind of reconditioning. And a part of the brainwashing procedure is that he is going to have to assassinate a notable Klingon ambassador. I believe it's Ambassador Kell is the name of the ambassador, who just happens to be traveling under the protection of the Federation on the Enterprise. I believe there is a rebellion going on within the Klingon Empire, and the ambassador Kel is kind of tasked with having to quell that rebellion. And while we're on the ship, our Starfleet crew kind of has to deal with the assignment. They have to put their best foot forward for Ambassador Kel. And this isn't so much an episode about Geordi, so it doesn't kind of go into his backstory or his struggle or anything. It's really an episode that uses Geordi as the kind of instrument for the intrigue and the action. But surrounding all of that, the interactions with Ambassador Kel, with Picard, there's so much intrigue going on. And I think they managed to kind of upset the status quo by taking things that you assume about Klingons, that they're very honorable and noble. And they've slowly started to deconstruct that this season. And this episode continues that trend when we find out that Ambassador Kel is actually a Romulan agent. And yeah, it just has one of the most chilling endings ever, which just unfolds in a cargo bay where Geordi is about to strike at his assigned target that he's been conditioned to kill. And Data foils the plot. Spoilers again for the episode. But the fallout of it, in which the Klingons have to kind of do some policing amongst themselves, it doesn't look like the ambassador is things are going to bode well for him. Now that they're going to have to search him for this E-band emissions device that is going to either prove or disprove his participation in the conspiracy. And I just remember the nervous look on Kel's face when he's like, Picard, is it too late for me to request asylum? It's like, I'd want to stay here. And they're like, and the other Klingon, the governor, he's like, no, you're coming with us and you're going to be searched on the planet. And like that's the last you're ever going to see of that guy. So again, Klingons operating to high murder and homicide rates amongst their constituency there. But yeah, it's just a great episode in terms of the way the investigation with Data, how it slowly unfolds and they put the pieces together. And it's hard to do it when you kind of know up front as the viewer what has happened, because you were there for the abduction. You kind of know the conspiracy. It can be a little boring when you're watching the rest of the cast catch up to that. But in this case, they made it really, really exciting and really suspenseful. And I think it's an episode that kind of gets missed on fans' best of lists. So wanted to call it out in this panel discussion. The mind's eye.
Well done. I totally agree with you. I know you want to talk about more episodes, and Taylor, you can also talk about more episodes later if you want to. But first I go to Merv, give him the floor for a while. What's your pick for this month?
I chose Remember Me, which is an episode that features heavily Beverly Crusher, who, if you've paid attention, I wasn't a fan of in season 1, and then she wasn't in season 2, but in season 3 she started to win me over. And this episode in season 4 really won me over, and I'm not really sure why. It just it was a heavily Beverly centered episode, just her trying to solve this issue. But in the episode, Beverly meets a friend who comes aboard the Enterprise, and then at the same time, her son, Wesley, bless his heart, is tinkering with some experiment or whatever to make some kind of a static warp drive or something, and nothing seems to happen. And then Beverly wakes up the next day, and her friend's disappeared, and nobody has any recollection of him, and there's no record that he ever appeared in the ship, and people that she introduced him to completely disregard it, and she's really suspicious and wondering what happened. In the meantime, periodically over the episode, people start disappearing, and she starts seeing this phantom image thing appear in this weird vortex. So she's trying to figure it out, but she's the only one who has any idea what's going on. And I think this one sticks out to me because throughout the majority of the first half of this episode, I'm thinking it's a problem of external factors. this thing is happening. These people are getting sucked into some alternate dimension or whatever, and Beverly's the only one, for whatever reason, maybe because she was in the room or some odd reason, she's immune to it, and she's the only one who has any idea what's going on. And here, whenever they reveal like the twist of it, which is that actually it was Beverly that was sucked into the thing, for some reason that just didn't even dawn on me whatsoever, that she is in this alternate dimension or whatever you want to call it. And the things that she's fearing, this vortex and all that stuff, that's actually the people on the Enterprise outside of her world actually trying to pull her out of this, dimension before it essentially closes in on itself, and she gets presumably killed or whatever. And I just, whenever I first watched this episode, like that twist caught me totally by surprise. I totally thought this was a straight up like, oh, there's a problem, she's going to be the only one to fix it. And that is kind of what it is, but I totally didn't expect the revelation that we pull back and we see that like she's in the problem, like she's the only one in the problem, all these people are fine, but she's the one stuck in a box. And I just really thought that was a, I don't know, it brought a unique feeling of kind of a plot twist that I wasn't used to for Star Trek there. And it featured a character which, it has been building up in my appreciation for. So I really appreciated that a lot. And, maybe they were right. Maybe Wesley doesn't deserve to be on the show. So maybe this will be his last season.
Lord Deathman.
Yep.
Too soon.
You have another pick? I know you do, but you want to talk
Yeah.
about another episode?
I do. And just briefly here, guys, I just wanted to bring some attention to some of the lesser known episodes. I think this is a great forum to get those overlooked gems. I am a big fan of an episode called Night Terrors. It's very rare that Counselor Troy gets a lot to do on this show. She usually is the one that is getting abused or something weird is happening to her. But Night Terrors is an episode essentially where the Enterprise crew experiences severe sleep deprivation and hallucinations due to their proximity to a mysterious kind of derelict ship. And there is a mystery surrounding it, why the crew is being sleep deprived. And Troy, Marina Sirtis, is key to kind of unfolding the plot, and her empathic abilities get used to maximum impact here, rather than the more passive role that she tends to get in earlier seasons of the show. So I just wanted to call that to everyone's attention. It's also a great episode in terms of her performance and for the performance of the whole cast, because all of the crew has to play these kind of sleep deprived, descending into madness with these very subtle acting changes and cues that prove that these are professionally trained actors, and they really do know what they're doing when they're not forced to play the same character over and over again at the same pitch. My next episode that I want to bring up again very briefly is Brothers. There's some mixed feelings in this in the fandom with regards to this episode, and I just wanted to come out strongly in favor of it, because you have this is a triple hander from Brent Spiner as Data, his own father, Dr. Sung, and his own brother, Lore, who all get reunited when Data kind of responds to a homing signal from his creator, Dr. Sung, which creates one of the most exciting opening sequences to an episode I think you have in the history of the show, where Data is constantly foiling the crew in terms of redirecting the ship to go to where the homing beacon wants him to go, and they're trying everything under their power to stop Data, but he's just like changing encryption codes, setting up cascading force fields, he's shutting off turbo lifts, and all of this without saying a word. He has to kind of play this kind of hypnotized version of himself that is doing this, and it just shows you like what a lethal kind of weapon, no pun intended there, Data can be when you let him kind of off the chain and use his full capabilities. But without going too much into the episode, it really does get into some emotional territory between father and the two sons, even though they are androids and a human. And I really love Brent Spiner's portrayal of Dr. Sung, especially in terms of trying to bring his two boys together and reconcile that relationship not wanting to accept that one of his sons is clearly a sociopath, and the other one isn't equipped to sort of give him the kind of family reunion and bonding that he's looking for. So I've always appreciated the episode, brothers.
I agree. Taylor, anything you want to talk about in another episode?
I'm not going to talk about any episodes specifically. There's a couple of things this season that I
Yeah.
believe we get the first introduction of the Trill in the episode The Host,
Yes.
where
correct.
Beverly falls in love with the guy and doesn't realize that he's actually a parasite inside of the body. And of course, we'll learn more about Trill later on. I always like it when Lieutenant Reg Barkley shows up. I don't think this was the first season he appeared in, but he did appear in this season, where he becomes a super genius through some accident called I think that episode was the Nth Degree. So I always like when he appears. I like the actor. He was I first saw him on the A Team in the '80s, and
Yes.
he's a fun guy.
Yes.
Tasha Yar's sister is in one episode, and hello, what I don't know what's in the water in that family's home, but holy cow.
Yeah, if you're into blondes, that's the family to go to. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so those are just a couple of the things. A lot of strong episodes, and again, a lot. The one thing the Next Generation does even more than the first generation did, and partly because it has 7 seasons as opposed to 3 seasons, and almost only had 2 for the original series, is this world building and this universe building, and it just continues here in this season.
Yeah, they really do flesh out other empires and other stuff, like other races and relationships and stuff like that. And what I like about the Next Generation, what they do better, and that's also part of what Taylor just said, they had more seasons and more episodes, is like what happens in one episode has an impact later on in the series. And it doesn't mean like it's serialized, because the Next Generation is not serialized at all, but it does have, like, it makes sense. Things that happen in one episode have impact later on, relationships change, etc., which we will find out in later seasons as well. But we have so I like that. Before I go to you, Merv, if you want to have some more thoughts on season 4, I go to Lord Death Man because he has a follow-up.
Sure. First off, I just wanted to point out that Reg Barkley is played brilliantly by Mr. Dwight Schultz. Yes, he is an A-Team fan, but he is one of my absolute favorite guest players in the Star Trek franchise.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to make notes, just following up on you talking about the serialization or lack of serialization, rather, in TNG. It is not a serialized show, and each episode does reset the status quo and send them on another adventure. But somehow, so many of the seeds, especially from this very season, are kind of bear fruit in later series as we go down the line with Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Some of these things really do come to fruition in a way that I kind of wish modern Star Trek could take a few cues from. And I do realize that these series were kind of back to back when they debuted, and some of these series were even running concurrently with each other. But I do wish we could get back to this level of continuity and world building. And I just wanted to speak out for that, because that seems to have fallen by the wayside for some fans in the fandom.
Alex Kurtzman will not be able to do that. But anyway, we will discuss him next week, actually. But we'll see about that. Merv, any thoughts on season 4 as a whole? Other episodes you want to point out? How are you enjoying Star Trek: The Next Generation so far?
I will say, I know you mentioned that maybe you didn't think season 4 was as good as season 3, but I thought it was probably the best season of Star Trek that I had watched yet. Just one more honorable mention as far as episodes go, and it might be a weird one, but Cupid, for some reason I feel like it's not going to be a lot of people's, like, it's just like kind of a throwaway thing. But I love that they brought back Picard's romantic interest from last season, Vash. And then I liked the awkwardness of having Vash and Beverly in the same room where Picard is having tea with, I think he's having tea with one or the other, and then the other one walks in, and it's like this weird, like, oh, I guess I'm romanticizing both of you, kind of simultaneously, weird situation. But then I've always just really liked Robin Hood as like a thing, any movies that feature Robin Hood and the story of Robin Hood. So whenever they go and it's like kind of this, cosmetic reimagining of the tale of Robin Hood, like I actually like, it was just really fun, and I love seeing like for example, Worf in this episode as I think he was Will Scarlet, and he just couldn't. He's like, that looks ridiculous. You could just see he
He's
was
not
furious.
a merry man.
Yeah, there was just a lot of little like comedic moments there, and I also like that they brought back like, kind of a forgotten love interest, and then she winds up with Q at the end, and you're like, okay, well, maybe we'll see these characters again. I'd imagine we might, at the very least Q. So that's something for me to look forward to. And just as a season as a whole, I love the way that they overlaid like personal dilemmas with the episodic problems at hand. I thought they did that really well in this season, to where like every problem is also like creating depth for the characters. And they're getting really good at that, I think, as these seasons go on in the Next Generation. A couple little, I don't. I'll also say I love the Klingon problem. I love the introduction of like the Cardassians, which we mentioned, and the consistent Romulan problem. It seems like they're just everywhere you turn, as well as the Borg being out there. There's all these aspects that like keep cropping up, and it's like it does really create this like fleshed out world where nothing stops moving just because the Enterprise isn't there. Like the Klingon, fight for power is still going on, and whenever the next time the Enterprise shows up, like maybe somebody else is in charge and that sort of thing. Like they don't stop their bickering just because the Enterprise is over in this sector or whatever, which is something I really like. Like you really feel that like it's a lived-in world at this point. I can only assume he shows up again. I know he shows up later, but goodbye Wesley for now, I guess. It was kind of sad to see his finale episode, I guess, didn't really resonate as well with me. I think maybe because Beverly wasn't as heavily involved as Picard was, to where like I felt like the mother-son relationship kind of got lost in the weeds there. But hey, they replaced him with like a blonde by the end of the season, or maybe it's season 5. I'm getting them mixed up a little bit in my memory, so hey, that's okay. And not a con exactly, but this was a rough season for Geordi. He got rejected by his holographic crush and whenever he met her in real life, and then he got turned into like a glowworm in the dark, and then he gets his mind wiped and becomes like an assassin against the Federation. Like that guy just couldn't catch a break, and he didn't even get to really go on his vacation that he was going to take. So I hope season 5 is a little kinder to Geordi. Felt like he was like the whipping mule in this one.
Yeah.
I really like this season, and I'm really like falling in love with the Next Generation with every new edition. And spoiler alert, it starts off really strong in season 5 for me as well. I'm only a couple episodes in, but the first couple were some of the best episodes yet. So
Yeah,
very happy.
Yeah, but save that energy for next month.
Save it for
Taylor.
Next month.
You had a follow-up.
Yeah, actually, I really liked the glowworm episode, and the first time I saw it, it kind of creeped me out. It was a pretty spooky episode. But the other thing I wanted to say, I wanted to make a correction before the fandom jumps on me. I know there's like 10 people who are going to watch this, but before they jump on me, the Trill is not a parasite. It is a symbiote. So don't attack me for calling it a parasite.
Yeah. Well, I forgive you, Taylor. You gave us so much. We can forgive you for this time. I think we have unpacked season 4 of the next Star Trek: The Next Generation enough for this month. So we will conclude this month's episode of the Star Trek Project, I should say. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. We certainly did. Well, if you did, you can help us out. Like and share this review. Subscribe to our channel and join our forum at cigar.freeforms.net. You can talk to us. It's nice. We are nice people. Our next episode of the Star Trek Project will be, and we have already said that, next week, because Section 31 comes out on February 7th in my country, and then we will discuss it the weekend after.
I bet you're really looking forward to that, huh?
I've heard some things, but so far, I scroll through TikTok very fast if I ever see Section 31. But anyway, better late than never. Review. There's a review for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man coming up, and for Captain America: Brave New World. Of course, we're going to also review Daredevil Born Again on a weekly basis in a month time or so. But I already start to tease that, of course. But for now, I would like to thank you all also on behalf of the other champions and wish you to live long and prosper. Bye.